Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Hot for Teacher. I'm Adam Coble. Wouldn't it be weird if there was just somebody else here one day? If it was just like, we just didn't talk about it or acknowledge it at all. It was just someone completely different. I should just get somebody to do this episode for me sometime. So this is episode number 31 of Hot for Teacher, an office hours spinoff about relationships. And I'm really excited. I'm excited to sit down and talk about relationships and stuff these days. It's been a long time since we've gotten to do an episode, and it's really nice to be back. I've got 3 really good ones today, and I think we're going to cover a pretty good variety of topics, right? We have a question about relating to artists and art and the world at large. We got a question about work, right? Relating to coworkers or people that we're creating things with. And then we got a more traditional love, feelings, and other such relationships question to answer. So yeah, all kinds of good stuff today. If this is your first episode of Hot for Teacher, thank you for coming, first and foremost. Welcome. I hope you enjoy it. The way Hot for Teacher works is that everybody submits questions. Everybody who has questions submits them to me. They go to my website, www.adam-coble.com, and they click on the Hot for Teacher link. They fill out the form, and then I answer those questions on the stream. We do 3 of them every episode, sometimes longer, sometimes shorter. It kind of depends on what we want to talk about. And honestly, I tend to prefer to just sort of wing it. We used to format this, and I would spend a bunch of time making notes and kind of like thinking about the various questions pretty deeply. But honestly, I think this stuff works best if I just speak from the heart. So if you're expecting a relationship presentation, you might be surprised. So we're just going to take a look at these questions. We're going to answer them. And often the questions themselves, in the answering bring up more questions, more things to discuss. And that's the stuff that I like. It's the emergent stuff that occurs as we answer them. So let's get into it. If you have questions of your own, just go ahead and hit the website, fire them in there, and we'll answer them in a future episode. But I think that probably there'll be a little bit of something for everybody this episode. So our first question comes from Mara. And they ask, I was wondering what you do when you discover that a musician whose music resonates with you or helps you through hard times, is a complete asshole. Now, I'm sure we can all think of someone, right? Think about the music that you like. Think about the movies, the TV shows, the books, the comics, the Twitch streams, the YouTube channels that you enjoy. Think about all those things. And I bet you can think of at least one person where you're like, good. They're just a duck with a milkshake. I think we've all experienced this. In Mara's case, I'm thinking of the band Emperor, who I will never be supporting financially ever again in particular. But this could apply to multiple composers for varying degrees of assholery. Do you still feel comfortable listening? Do you think it's okay to divorce the composer from their music they've created? Or is the composer too tightly wound with their work for the music to be worth listening to anymore? So this is an interesting question because I think we all have this. Like, this is a universal experience. And I don't think that this is just about music. Now, I like this question especially because Emperor is a black metal band. And I like black metal. I think black metal's cool. It's a style of music I enjoy, but holy shit, is it problematic. The people that make it are often have some bad ideas about the world and how it works. But we see this across the board, right? We see this in all kinds of music, all kinds of movies and TV show. I don't think we can go a day these days without learning that someone that we think is cool is actually garbage. And then we get put in this position where separating the art from the artist becomes more and more a debate, a discussion, a thing. And I think that the discourse around it is really tricky because I don't know. I don't know that it's possible. I used to think that you could. I used to think that it was possible to say, this is the person, this is the art. They're not the same thing. The overlap is not such, right? You can ignore the person and enjoy the art. You don't know. Let me tell you a story about my top tier problematic fave. So one of my favorite movies, I don't think it's my favorite movie of all time, but one of my favorite movies is a film called Chinatown. It's a really cool film noir movie set in the 30s in LA. It's a fantastic movie. Really, really good. Cinematic genius. But the problem with Chinatown is that it's directed by an absolute dirtbag named Roman Polanski. Roman Polanski. Now, Roman Polanski is a burning garbage fire of a person. And I don't mean that in the charming, like, oh, what a mess they are kind of way. I mean in a, like, sexual predator kind of way. I mean it in a, like an actual undeniably bad person. Roman Polanski sucks. Fuck you, Roman Polanski. He sucks. But sucky people, God help us, can still make good art, right? Roman Polanski being a piece of shit, I used to think had nothing to do with Chinatown. I used to think that I could be like, you know what, Chinatown, he's not the only part of it, right? Roman Polanski is not the only thing. There's actors, there's cinematographers, there are other people, and they are responsible for the movie as much as Roman Polanski is. So I can just watch Chinatown and I can say, you know what, fuck it. Roman Polanski sucks, but this movie is great and I don't need to think about it anymore. But I don't know that that's enough. I don't know that that's enough. I think that we can acknowledge that these things are true. We can acknowledge that, yes, Chinatown is made by a lot of different people and not all of them are garbage, right? There are a lot of great, hardworking, decent, non-sexually abusive, non-dirtbag humanoids who went into the making of Chinatown. But Roman Polanski is still involved, and no matter what I do, no matter how I justify it, no matter how many pretzels I tie my moral and ethical brain into, Roman Polanski is still a part of that film, and supporting Chinatown and talking about Chinatown and getting other people to consume that film is implicitly supporting Roman Polanski. Now, it's not like I'm going to his house and shaking his hand and giving him money and saying, thanks, Roman, I forgive you for being a piece of shit because Chinatown is so good. But I have to get right with the idea that enjoying this film is in some way or another showing support for a person who I believe is complete garbage. Now, I think we exist, as far as media goes, we exist in a time period of dramatic extremes, right? We exist in a time period where culturally we're expected to love something to death, right? To die for the things that the media that we like. We are expected to be fans in the truest, deepest sense. Or if we are not those things, we must hate the thing, right? So, like, for example, there are people who, if I express this concern, if I say I love Chinatown, it's a fantastic film, but I can't get over how shitty Roman Polanski is, I'll be accused of not being a real fan of Chinatown. Now, insert in here whatever you want, right? Saying, I like black metal, but it has problems culturally, right? People will say, well, fuck you. You're not a real black metal fan. You don't love metal, right? You're just faking it. If you really loved it, you'd be able to separate Varg Vikernes from the genre he created, right? We exist in a time period where the expectation is fanaticism or nothing. And I think that really kills the nuance of conversations like this and of thinking about things like this. Now, I absolutely want to just like put it out there that I do not think that we can separate the art from the artist. I think that we have to recognize that when we support either with our wallet or with our time or with our attention or our influence or whatever, when we support artists that are problematic without assessing and analyzing and doing work to repair that, and we'll talk about what we can do to kind of be better consumers in a minute, but when we do that, we are implicitly a part of the same problems that these creators are, right? And you see this happen, and I think that it's an awful, awful feeling to realize that you have to assess the art and you have to take into account the artist and know that, yeah, maybe you can't just blindly love things. That's a hard feeling, that there are conditions. But I think also it comes with the idea that we are allowed to have nuance for art, that we are allowed to recognize that Chinatown is made by a lot of talented people. And that, yeah, Roman Polanski sucks and fuck him, but that we can appreciate the other work that goes into these things. We can appreciate that stuff while also holding the opinion that the director is a piece of garbage, right? I think that we can listen to black metal while also recognizing that Varg and his ilk are terrible, right? So I think the first and foremost thing that I do is try to understand how much of the artist's personal stuff has bled into their work. Now, I think that every artist, no matter who they are, whether they make games or TV shows or movies or music or whatever, every artist puts their fingerprints on their work. You cannot separate the art from the artist because the art flows from the artist, right? You cannot say The Color Out of Space stands apart from H.P. Lovecraft, who had some pretty shitty ideas about race and gender. That's how it goes, right? You can't separate those things. So what we have to do instead is acknowledge them and listen to our own feelings about those things, right? If you can't look past that stuff, if you can't say, listening to this Emperor album, I am able to ignore the bad things that I know about the people in this band, I feel fine, right? I can't look past that. I feel fine never listening to it anymore. You can just let it go. There are other bands. There are other black metal bands. You can acknowledge. We pull a condo on these things, right? We look at them. We say, this thing had a positive influence on my life. I learned something about the people that made this art, and now I feel differently about it, and move on. You don't have to. You're not owed a nostalgia debt to these things. We can let stuff go, right? And this is the thing I think a lot of people have trouble with. To use Lovecraft as an example, a lot of people are like, well, you know, like Lovecraft was my first example of cosmic horror, and I can't let that go. Like, I need it, right? Like, yes, I know Lovecraft's kind of a dirtbag, and I didn't really know that before, and I didn't really think about it, but like, you're doing yourself a disservice. You don't owe H.P. Lovecraft anything. I don't owe Roman Polanski anything. Mara doesn't owe Emperor anything, right? We don't owe them shit. We can just let that go. So if you find in the moment that you can no longer enjoy the products of these people because of now what you know about them. Like here's another example. For me, I used to love the song Ignition. I used to love it. Every time I heard it in a club or every time I heard it on the radio, anytime I heard it in a mix or whatever, I would just be like, fuck yeah. I love this song, right? Now, when I hear that song, I think, great. Now I'm thinking about R. Kelly. Now, R. Kelly has always been a little bit problematic, but a lot of those things have come to light to really show off just what a dirtbag R. Kelly is. So now when I listen to Remix to Ignition, I can't. Like, I hear it and I'm just like, ugh. I have a bad taste in my mouth. And that's not about the song, really. It's not even about R. Kelly. It's about my reaction to that art. Because we've talked about this a ton of times just on the general stream, about the way that art is absorbed in context, that you are a different person now than you were yesterday. And even if R. Kelly has always been a dirtbag, you are reacting to that differently now. It doesn't take away all of the fun times. It doesn't taint all of the fun times I had listening to Ignition in the past. It's not going to ruin the many dance parties of years gone by. But I've moved on. I've moved on. And I don't think that we should be judging ourselves for doing that, right? I think that we grow up and we grow out of things. But I also don't think it's unreasonable to continue enjoying this stuff if you are also acknowledging how shitty the people that make these things can be, right? Like, I think it's okay to keep listening to Michael Jackson, but you have to be okay with the idea that you are enjoying something that is made by a person that is like deeply problematic. And I don't mean this in a sort of buzzwordy sense. I just mean like they are a person who has some bad behaviors in their past. It is a person who is just not nice or good. And I think that this is true of a lot, because if you follow this line far enough, you'll find that you cannot ethically enjoy anything. This is the danger of extreme acknowledgement of this thing, because if on a long enough timeline, and if you dig hard enough, everything sucks. Right? Everything is a product of a great, enormous, sucky engine. And so you just have to make decisions that reduce the amount of harm that you are doing to yourself and to the people around you as much as possible, right? There's a big difference between, for example, listening to Ignition once in a while in my car on my own, and then posting about how much I love R. Kelly and tweeting at people who say that I shouldn't listen to it and telling them to fuck off, and openly, actively supporting the art and saying, everyone who can't separate the art from the artist, you're an idiot and a bad person, right? There's a big difference between hearing Billie Jean on the radio and not changing the channel, and then being harmful in your behavior to support the thing. And that's not even taking money into account, right? Like, do we consider it a more or less egregious ethical stance to, say, pirate a movie? Say you'd never seen Chinatown, right? Say you've never seen Chinatown, and you're hearing me talk about it, and you're like, well, Adam says it's a good movie, but I don't want Roman Polanski or anyone connected to him to get my money. Could I pirate that film? Is that still an act of harm? And I can't. I guess the thing is that I can't make this call, right? We all want to feel like we're adhering to some kind of like greater moral or ethical code or stance, right? We all want to feel like we belong to a culture that all agrees on what behaviors are good and what behaviors are bad. This is a thing that binds us together, right? But the thing is that culture that we want to belong to has grown so far beyond we are capable of understanding, and we are being manipulated in so many subtle ways, especially around productization of art and these behaviors, is that when we go looking for answers, right, when we ask questions like, is it okay to divorce the composer from their music? What we're trying to do is help ourselves align our compass with a greater moral whole, and there just isn't one. Because the culture is too big. So my experience with this is first and foremost acknowledging that, and this is a deeply nihilistic and pessimistic approach, but understand that everything is flawed, right? Everything that we love is imperfect, right? Even the things that we don't think are imperfect, they are, right? Then acknowledging that it's okay to be contradictory, that things like this are nuanced and subtle, right? That it's okay to both like a song and be disgusted by the artist that created the song, right? We don't need these extremes. We don't need a definitive answer one way or another. That you can sit with that uncertainty. You can sit with that feeling of not knowing and not have it be a huge problem. I think the thing is knowing for yourself how you really feel, right? And that's all you can do, and you have to do it all the goddamn time, and it is exhausting, but that's the world we live in, right? Making these choices individually, one at a time, about the media that we consume, the things that we produce, the people we spend time with, the companies we work for, the products we buy, everything that we do, we have to be able to listen to our own sense of ethics around that stuff, right? And it's going to be a different answer for me than it is for you. I suppose for me, the thing is, and maybe this is the greater concern or the greater kind of feeling. I think the answer to personally, right? And obviously there are going to be other people arguing other things or whatever, but personally, for me, I do not believe we can separate the art and the artist as deeply as we would like. Because no matter how many people worked on Chinatown, no matter how many people there are in Emperor, right? No matter what, there is that black mark. There's that dark stain on that thing. And it is a part of that art. Everybody brings something of themselves into the things that they create. It's just a question of like whether that's enough for us to stop. And I can't speak for your own inner voice. Having a conscience is cool and important. And for me, I think it's like, am I hurting somebody with the things that I love? Am I harming myself? Am I harming the people around me? Who is benefiting and who is hurting from me engaging in this thing? But yeah, I mean, this is a greater question, Mara. This is the question of ethical consumption. This is a question of art versus capitalism. This is a question of auteur and a changing and shifting ethical ground upon which we build art. So everything I have just described, all of that greater stuff, fundamentally doesn't matter. Right? Nothing has any inherent meaning. We cannot get at some universal objective truth about this. So what I would invite Mara and everyone else to do is look at the things that you love from the perspective of someone who acknowledges that criticizing something doesn't mean you don't love it. Caring about and being interested in a thing that is problematic does not make you a bad person. But it's also okay to not like stuff. It's okay to leave things behind. It's okay to say goodbye to ignition. Because I guess the flip side of all of this, and I guess I'm gonna end this question on a positive note. I suppose I won't drown you in my pessimism. But I think if you want to take a positive spin on this, if you want to look at this in a way that isn't quite so depressing, it isn't quite so like everything sucks. For every Chinatown, for every emperor, for every ignition, there are 100 movies, bands, artists that aren't Roman Polanski, right? There is so much good being made in the world right now. So much excellent, beautiful, interesting art being made by people who are not total dirtbags. For a really long time, being able to make popular, easily accessible art was the province of the dirtbag, right? And having the privilege and the ability to make those things, to be put in that position to create that stuff, often made you into a dirtbag. But we're entering into a time, or we're really like embracing a time where you have options. So fuck Emperor. If they make you feel bad listening to them, let them go. There are other cooler, better black metal bands out there that are not total shitheels. And it just takes a little looking, right? And so now when we want to become fans of things, it's worth digging into them a little. It's worth learning about them. Like, who made this thing? What are these people like? You know, I want to like this thing. I wonder what their creator is like. What did they bring to the table? Right? What kinds of things about them are part of their art? So be critical of art, be critical of artists. It's a form of caring about things, and use that knowledge, use that learning to make yourself a better consumer of things. Right? Don't beat yourself up. Don't guilt trip yourself for the things that you love. Don't force yourself to give up on things. Embrace the chaos of being a person. We're all in the same strange, awkward capitalist nightmare together. And while I would love to be able to sell you an ethical answer for only $5.99, I can't. No one can. And don't listen to anyone who tries, right? You have to have this answer for yourself. So, like with so many things, I wish that the answer were easy and there was a clear one, but there isn't. And honestly, this is why I wanted to answer this question so much, is because I like when there isn't a clear answer. Sometimes people will ask me questions on Hot for Teacher and be like, so I've been with my boyfriend for 4 years and he keeps pushing my dog down the stairs. What should I do? Clear answer. Fuck that. Get out of here. Like, take your dog and get out of there. This guy's a jerk, right? Sometimes the answer is very clear, but then people like Mara ask me questions like ethical consumption in late capitalism. How do I do it? Sometimes it's nice not trying to come up with an answer, but we're all in it together. So I'll keep working on it. You keep working on it. We'll all just kind of share our experiences and try not to hurt each other in the process. And if you take nothing else away from the answer to this question, fuck you, Roman Polanski. I hope you're watching this because you're a dirtbag. Chinatown's good, but fuck you. Our second question, we're going to talk broadly about this one, but I'll answer the specific question too. So this question comes to us from Nax. So this is a question that straddles RPGs and work/projects. I've been trying to get a live streaming RPG show off the ground for a while now, and my major stumbling block is availability, right? It's known. This is a known fact that the thing that kills RPGs isn't TPKs, it's scheduling. We all know this. This is true. Finding people who have the enthusiasm, interest, and time to commit to the show has left me floundering. Normally, when I fail personally, just on my own, pick myself up, dust myself off, and try again. It's so much harder when the success of the project relies on the goodwill and continued support of other people. How do I maintain my patience and enthusiasm at the same time? So this isn't really a question about scheduling, is it? It isn't. It really isn't. And I don't think I'm going to lay it out for you. Okay. So people like to complain and joke about how like scheduling kills role-playing game campaigns. It doesn't. Now, it's not about scheduling. What kills role-playing games is a lack of passion, a lack of priority. Because scheduling and inability to schedule is a symptom of not prioritizing certain things. Because if you sit down with a group of people and you're like, let's find some time to play a game, right? Someone will say, I am free this day and this day between these times and these times. And someone else will say, well, I'm busy this time and that time. And someone else will say, well, I can't make this one, but I can make this other one. And then you end up in a situation sometimes where just no one has overlapping time. And the reason for this, as I think Nax is feeling, is that scheduling is about prioritizing certain things over other things. What you are or are not willing to cancel in favor of another thing. So it's about prioritization. I think we like to blame scheduling because it's easier, right? It's easier to be like, well, the game failed because nobody could make it on this particular day. But what you're really saying is the game failed because we couldn't find other things to not do. Right? It's not the cause. It's the cause is that they prioritize other stuff. Now, to be fair, yeah, you probably should prioritize things like working over playing a role-playing game. You should probably prioritize taking care of your children over role-playing games. Maybe you could prioritize your friends, your other friends, and your romantic partners over playing a role-playing game. I wouldn't, personally, but I know where my priorities lie. And this is true across the board, right? Sometimes to help people prioritize, we incentivize them, right? So like, for example, if people are having a hard time deciding between doing work and playing a role-playing game on Twitch, sometimes saying we're going to pay you an amount of money per episode, then they can say, cool, well, now it's worth it to do this thing instead of being on my own channel, right? For me, that's an example. There are other factors, right? Sometimes for some people, role-playing is friend time, right? And so they don't have to say, oh, well, I have to like go to the bar or do social stuff with my friends and I don't have time to do this. I gotta think. So the trick becomes finding people who have the same level of commitment to a project that you do, right? And that's hard. I mean, this is baseline relationship advice, right? Do things with people who want to do those things the same amount as you do, right? If you want to play a role-playing game every week and everyone in your group wants to play a role-playing game once a month, guess who's only going to be playing a role-playing game once a month? It's your ass, right? So have this conversation with your players, with the people that you are getting together when you get it together. Talk about expectations. We often just assume, well, it's a campaign, so we're going to be playing every week for 5 hours a week on the same day. And when we agree to this day, this is the day. And no matter what, this is the top priority. But then other people will be like, it's the top priority unless my spouse wants to hang out, or I have a family event, or any of my other friends want to do anything, or there's a concert I want to go to, or there's a new game I want to stream, or or. And so now the RPG is down at the bottom for them, but for you, it's up top. And I think that work and games, right? Like what Nax is talking about, they're talking about building a thing that is a game. This can be imbalanced as well, right? I'll give you a little inside baseball. An episode of Court of Swords is higher up on the priority list for me and for JP than it is for Dan, Max, and Zeke. Now, it's not extremely higher, right? It's still something that the three of them, it's fun, it's entertaining, it's cool and good for them. They want to play. We're pretty close, but sometimes Max has a game that he really wants to stream the day it comes out, and that overlaps with Court of Swords, right? Sometimes Zeke has a hosting event that is a higher priority. And these things, when we can plan for them, they don't derail or destroy our ongoing patience and enthusiasm because we established that early on. We said, we're going to try to do an episode every week. That would be ideal. That'd be perfect. We all agree as a group, in a perfect world, nothing would ever get in the way, and we would get to play Dungeons and Dragons together every week, every Tuesday at the same time. Wouldn't that be nice? But obviously, that's not the reality of it. And so we talked about what things do you know will happen during the year that will interrupt, right? So I could say to JP, well, Zeke and I are planning a trip to Japan, and I am going to Gen Con, and Zeke's going to be at E3, and JP's got drop frames to cover E3. Dan has some games that he might need to play, and we can look to that in advance, and then we can all agree what is important to us and how do we deal with it when we get there. So having a plan, this is a backup plan, right? And I think you can do this in any kind of relationship. You can set your expectations. You can talk about what you want. They can tell you what they want. You can all acknowledge that and not have to pretend like you're all on the same page when you never agreed to that, right? This is about consenting to agreeing to that project. Now, Nax, if this is your baby, right? No one will ever care about role play as much as JP does, right? I feel like I'm pretty close. The other cast members are pretty close for the various shows, but none of us will ever be as invested in it as JP is because it's his baby, right? But we talked about that. And you should talk about that with your group. Everyone should talk about that with the people that they are engaged in projects with. This can be a school project. This can be a work project. This can be a role-playing game. This can be a regular group that meets to play dodgeball. It can be a photography club. I don't care what it is. Talk about the optimal situation, right? And then talk about things that might interrupt that. And I think that this can feel scary for people. I think that people get scared when they're expected to acknowledge potential future problems. I think we get this in our head where we think that if we don't talk about stuff, it'll just never be an issue. And I get that. Like, you probably wouldn't on your first date with someone be like, look, so I have a problem with fidelity. I get into monogamous relationships and then I just fall in love with other people. So you should just probably expect that, right? Like, there is a time and place for these things and there's context. And if you're continuing to try to be monogamous and you're having that problem, maybe you should rethink your own life. But you want to give people the opportunity to be honest with you and with themselves. You want to ask them to say, like, listen, how invested are you in this? And there's no right or wrong answer. You're not sitting down to say, I need everybody to be at a 10 or you're fucking fired, right? This is like, if everybody's at a 7, this game is going to be a 7. We're not driving for that like desperate intentionality all the time. Now, I feel like the thing that I kind of like about having this conversation is with a group, you're going to find people who are engaged differently, people who are engaged more or less, right? And that's okay. Like, for example, with the new Far Verona season that we're going into, the point of session 0 and the conversations around it wasn't just to figure out what kinds of characters everyone wanted to play. And it wasn't just setting up the premise. It was being able to figure out what players were going to be able to bring more energy to the game in between sessions, how dedicated everybody was, and get a feel for the engagement levels, right? Because that will vary. Some people are going to be your right-hand person. They're going to be ready to be there, an hour before the episode. They're going to be giving you character notes. They're going to be bringing the top energy every single session, and other people won't, and that's okay, right? Not everybody has to be dialed in. You're going to be at the top, and everyone else's commitment will be slightly lower than that. And acknowledging these things, talking about these challenges, explaining what your hopes and dreams are for the show, and getting everybody on board and giving them a chance to be honest will make your job so much easier. Because what you don't want is leaving people in the lurch. You don't want to be floundering, as you put it, right? If you don't sit down and have this conversation about expectations, if you don't lay it out and talk to them, and I don't mean this in the sense of like you have to be this stoked to ride. I think just saying like, here's where I'm at. This is what I want to accomplish. Are you on board? If you give them that chance, they're going to be honest with you. And if you don't, they're still going to have the same level of energy. Right? You're not going to turn a 3 into a 7 simply by ignoring the fact that they're a 3. What you want to do is give that 3 a chance to tell you, I'm only going to give a shit about this while we're playing. I'm not going to think about it otherwise. I'm very busy. It's not a huge priority for me. And then you can decide together if it's a good fit. The thing is, if you don't talk about this, and here's the worst case scenario for a show, and this is why it takes us so long to build casts, is if you don't have this conversation, if you don't talk to your player group about this, something will happen later on down the line that will fuck up your production. Right? Somebody in your group who came in at like a level 2 energy out of 10, and you didn't find that out. They were like, yeah, I'm really excited because I'm in the call with you now and we're making characters and we're playing the game. I'm really excited right now. And then weeks go by and they start prioritizing other stuff. The show will fall apart because you relied on them to be up here and they were down here. And that's not their fault. It's not your fault either, right? It's just that you should have talked about it in advance and then check in regularly, right? Have that conversation as you go. Talk to people and be like, cool, how are we feeling? My model for this is we do the TV model, right? And you can apply this to relationships too. I honestly think you should do this in every relationship. They're called check-ins, fucking do them. But for shows, for games, what we do is we think about them in terms of seasons. So I get to the end of a period of time and I'm like, all right, we're kind of wrapping up this thing. How do you feel? Is everybody still prioritizing? Where is this game? Where is our campaign in your list? Because you never know, right? If you're playing with, let's say again, using this model of like playing with broadcasters, what if the person one of the people you're playing with, when you start the campaign, they're pretty open. They're like, you know what? I got a lot of time and I'm super into it. I got a lot of energy. I don't have a ton of other stuff going on. I have my own channel. I have my own projects, but like, this is a big deal. And a year later, they, I don't know, got featured on the front page. They've got a big sponsorship from like a game company. They broke, right? Maybe they made a video that went viral. They're a big deal now. They've like tripled or quadrupled their sub count. And they're like, oh shit, well, I'm making all this money and I'm really like dumping my energy into this thing. Maybe I don't have time for this show. I love it, but I've had to restructure. And if you don't check in, you don't give them the opportunity to back out. And then there's just, they can't show up. They have to keep canceling shows. And you get to a point where, like you said, your patience and enthusiasm are waning and you feel yourself like the thing is failing. And it's not anything you could control, but if you don't check in, you won't know that. So let people's priorities change. Give them room to be fluid individuals because they're going to be anyway. And you want to be a part of that. So yeah, it's a thing that you can do. Like I said, you can do it in friendships. You can do it in romantic relationships. You can check in with people because you got to acknowledge that people change. I'm different than I was a year ago or 2 years ago. Who amongst us is the same person, the exact same person that we were 5 years ago? I don't think anybody is. So talk about this, right? And maybe, I don't know, maybe this is something that you can do today, right? Reach out to somebody that's important to you. Reach out to somebody in your life, right? It could be someone really close to you, could be a family member, whatever, right? And just say to them like, hey, how do you feel about checking in? How are you feeling about our relationship? Do you like the amount of time we spend together? Would you want to spend more time together? Do you like what we do? Are we doing this just out of habit? Or do we actually enjoy it? Like, where am I in your life and where are you? And it doesn't have to be like a big terrifying conversation. It can just be like, hey, let's also celebrate all the stuff that we're into, right? Because this conversation, and I have found in my experience that check-ins with people tend to be very reinforcing. There might be like one or two things where they're like, you know what? I could afford to have something like this change, but things are good. You want to do on live, Trist? All right. So Trist Ray in chat, Trist, a friend of mine, just all caps to me in chat saying, "Hey Adam, we good?" Yes, Trist, we are good. I feel good about our relationship. I love interacting with you online. You reply to my tweets in ways that make me feel seen. I could use some more like in-person time with you, but you don't live in the same city as me, and that's on me because I'm in Seattle a lot. So I'm gonna try to make an effort to see you in person more often. That's something that I would like. If that's something you're down for. So that's it. That's all you have to do. Just acknowledge the stuff that you're working on, talk about the things that you like, and then do it, right? Like it doesn't have to be a big thing. And I think that we are scared of being honest with each other because we're afraid of what kinds of things that we might have to confront, right? Because yeah, I get that when you ask somebody, hey, how are you doing? How are we doing together? Right? How is this relationship functioning? There is a chance they're going to be like, I'm actually kind of unhappy about some stuff you didn't know about or that I haven't talked about. But you have to do it with an open heart. You have to do it with the idea that whatever they say is valuable. Whatever feedback you're going to get, that's good for you and it's good for the relationship. And so for Nax, check in with your players, right? What are they digging? What are they not digging? Everybody's still having a good time? Are we still as committed to the project or not? You know, how are we feeling? Because that's going to reinforce your energy level with them. You're going to feel like they are more bought in. They're going to be reminded that you care about their input. And it's going to just bring the whole fucking thing up, right? And I think this is great. Max Volume in chat said, not having these conversations is like not going to the doctor because you don't want to get sick. And God knows we all do this, right? It's very human to be like, I kind of have a headache and I've had a headache for a week and it's probably dehydration and I'm just going to ignore it and not go to the doctor because if I go to the doctor might tell me that I have a brain tumor and I don't want to have a brain tumor. So I'm just not going to go to the doctor. And that's how you die. Don't die. Go to the doctor. You know, so it's a whole thing. I mean, that's another whole complicated thing. But the idea is that just because you ignore a problem or just because you're unwilling to risk that there's going to be a problem, it doesn't make the problem go away. So I guess my advice here, Nax, if we're going to summarize, 1, set expectations. Talk to the people that you are going to engage in this project with and tell them what you hope to gain. Invite them to share their expectations, set up what you intend to do, right? How are we going to fulfill that expectation? Can everyone commit to that? And when are we going to check in again, right? Let's do 10 episodes and check in again. Let's do 20 episodes and check in again. Can you commit to once a week for these things? What weeks are you not going to be able to make it? When you can't make it, when will we reschedule? And if someone can't show up, can we still do an episode? The end, right? And don't make that a once and done conversation. Just like in role playing, I don't think we should do session 0 just before the campaign. I think we should do a session 0. We should do a check-in session or whatever, like every arc. And not to get all office hours about it, but some games do this by default. Like the trait vote in Burning Wheel is a perfect opportunity for a campaign check-in. So do this with your friends, whether you're in a relationship, you're in a relationship with your players, but whether you're playing a game, whether you're doing a project, whatever, check in, set expectations, do all that stuff. It's going to help. I promise. I promise it's going to help. So this third question, I feel like I've touched on this before, and I don't know if I've touched on it in an episode of, for those of you counting 52 minutes until a Burning Wheel reference, but I think this might be the first Burning Wheel reference in many episodes of Hot for Teacher. So anyway, this question, I think we've talked about this before. I'm not sure we've talked about it on Hot for Teacher, but I think it's an interesting one, and we should talk about it anyhow. So let me read this one. This is from Kay, and Kay says, as a non-monogamous queer person like yourself, that's me, I'm like that too, I've had difficulties determining how to define my relationships with others, especially when I'm speaking to heteronormative people within a more public setting. While it's arguably not their business, I don't think that's arguable. It's just not. I'm the type of person who loves to talk about the people in my life and those whom I care about. What's your go-to response when someone asks a relatively basic question like, is that your boyfriend, girlfriend? i.e., who is that person in relation to you and why should it matter? Do you have any particularly handy phrasing up your sleeve when it comes to addressing your lifestyle and the people therein? I am way too confrontational about this stuff to ever try to make it easier for other people. The only time I ever simplify this is for cops. And when I say cops, I mean the Border Patrol. So the only time I ever go out of my way to overly simplify this shit is when I drive down to the border and the guy at the border is like, where are you going? And I'm like, Seattle. And he's like, what are you doing in Seattle? And I'm like, going to visit my girlfriend. And he's like, cool, have fun. And I'm like, bam, drive through. Saying that makes me feel weird because it's not a way I like describing people. It's not, but there's a risk reward here. The risk being that if I were to be like, I'm going to see my friend, and they're like, oh, you go visit this friend a lot. And I'm like, yeah, they're important to me. And they're like, oh yeah, how do you know them? And I'm like, and it just drags out the fucking conversation. And the longer I have to spend yammering with this person who could just tell me, go back to Canada and never come to this country again. They have that power. I just play it straight. I just put on my straight hat and I'm like, yep, just a regular hetero dude just heading down to America to, just doing, because the thing is, it's about ease of use, right? The reason we have these terms is to take a vast human experience, smash it down into a tiny ball so that we can give it to other people to easily digest. It is not for us. It is not for our relationships. It is for other people, often people that don't know us well enough to know that there is nuance in that relationship. And this is why I fucking love this. I love when, for example, I'm doing a co-stream with Blue Jay, like we're playing a video game or something together, and someone comes into chat and they're like, yo, are they a couple? What are they? Are they what's going on here? I'm curious. I want to know about their thing. And chat, I don't even have to say anything. Blue Jay doesn't have to say. People in chat are like, this must be your first time here. Let me just. So around here, Adam doesn't talk about. So it's this feeling of being known and being seen that I value, right? Because in my life, I have found that reducing people to phrases, little bite-sized chunks, it reduces them. It reduces them down, right? And to Dave, who I see in chat saying, just explain it like Adam is her dungeon master. Wink, wink. Dave, I'm your dungeon master too. Sure you want to make that joke? So the thing is that we get in this position where people want to know this stuff, and that's fine. That's fair. Right? We're that's how language works. If we had to explain everything in great detail all the time, we wouldn't have a use for reductive terms. It's to create ease of experience. So when you say to someone, this is my mom. This is my mom, Gail. Chat, imagine this space. Imagine my mother. Stop imagining my mother, chat. If I were to say this is my mom, you would be like, oh, okay. I have some basic understanding of what their relationship is. This person maybe raised this other person, right? This person maybe gave birth to this person. But there's more to it than that, right? Some people have very close relationships with their parents. Some people have distant relationships with their parents. Some people have a great deal of anxiety in their relationship with their parents. Other people, their parents are very supportive and kind and gentle. And it's like you can't get any real emotional context from any of that. So I don't know. I try to. Here's how the conversation usually goes for me. I'll be talking to somebody, maybe somebody I don't know very well. And I'll say, yeah, I was in Seattle last weekend visiting Blue Jay. Yeah, we went to see Alien and Aliens. It was really super fun. And they'll be like, well, who's Blue Jay? And then depending on this person and how much I want to share my own emotional stuff with them, I will choose that answer, right? I'll contextualize. And I think that contextualizing and getting to make this choice helps people like Kay to embrace that getting to talk about the people in your life. In fact, I think that, okay, let's do a compare and contrast, right? If I did go in and just say, oh, that's a friend of mine, I'm done. That's it, right? They're going to assume a bunch of stuff. They're going to build a relationship in their head between us that they think they understand, and that's it. It's over. But if somebody says to me, oh, who's Blue Jay? And I say, oh, well, Blue Jay is a really close friend of mine who I know through role playing, and she's a Twitch broadcaster too. And we play these campaigns together, and we play in this one game with Elf and Lauren and Dave, and it's really fun. We've been playing together for a really long time, and we get to play it on the D&D channel. Do you play D&D? Right? Like you get invited to share this information, and you get to choose what information you share based on the context of your relationship with someone else. And honestly, like I think of a lot of the time, this kind of relationship language, right? My boyfriend, my girlfriend, it's super non-inclusive, right? It's a weird thing that says, A, this person belongs to me, and B, this person is somehow like hierarchically more significant or more important than other people in my life. And I think that it leaves so much empty space that it almost doesn't even answer the question. I don't usually find that people ask me for specific information. I don't find that if I say, like, I was playing role-playing games the other day and Max said this really funny thing, I don't find people say more than, who is Max? Right? I think that we are encouraged societally to give people certain information, basically like, are you working with this person? Are you exclusively romantic with this person? Y'all banging? I think those are the three things that people really want to know. And I don't really know why. I guess like they want to have some kind of like default thing, but I would way rather people ask specific questions, right? And if you're introducing someone, here's a trick. And I know I've talked about this before. Here's a trick, Kay, that you can use. Instead of saying, here's person A. Person A is my boyfriend. Instead, you could say, this is person A. Here is some cool piece of information about them or about us together, right? So instead of saying, this is A is my boyfriend, you can say, this is A. We play Magic the Gathering together every week. We go to tournaments. A is really good at Magic, but they play blue-black control, so you probably don't want to get to know them. Right? Like giving them something informational, something useful, something cool. Because that's way more useful than this is my boyfriend. Because if you say this is my boyfriend, they're going to assume, yeah, they banging, probably. Their boyfriend implies exclusivity to most people. Great. Now I know who you belong to. I know in what way you are property, which I find personally disgusting. So give them something they can use. Actually introduce them. Give them some data. But I feel you, Kay. I like talking about the people in my life that I care about too, right? And I love being a human sommelier, right? Like watching two people that I know who I have introduced get along really well. Ooh, it's so good. When I have people who I'm like, yeah, this is going to be great. This is going to be real good. So be like, Nadja, this is Megan. Megan, this is Nadja. Go. Right? And then you can give them a little stuff to get them going. You can be like, yeah, Nadja knows everything about Dragon Ball Z. Please. Right? You give them space to be themselves. You want to give people the spotlight. Right? To show themselves off. And if we just step in and say, this is A, he's my boyfriend, we've just ended that conversation, right? Maybe they're going to ask, how did you meet? But they're not going to be like, oh, pleased to meet you, A. Tell me all about the things that you love. Show me what an interesting individual you are. Now, this is a deeply weird place to occupy. I think this social dance is nuanced and complicated and very structured in a way that I just don't like. And to kind of go back to the beginning of the conversation, part of my satisfaction is in denying people that free pass, right? If you want to know the intimate details of my relationship with a person, you're going to need to be brave enough to ask. I'm not going to give that up to you. I'm not going to give you a bunch of freebies. I would rather tell you something cool about this person. I would rather open the door to you having a relationship with them independent of my connection to them. You know, it's like, hi, I'm Adam. This is my boyfriend. This is my coat. Those are my shoes. That's my dog. This is my car. You've now been introduced to all of my belongings. right? People are people, and you want to give them the opportunity to be humans. But I'm not gonna bust your ass. I'm not gonna bust your ass about using those terms, right? You are absolutely invited to use them when that simplification helps you or helps your relationship. Like if you're introducing somebody to your boss and they don't want to know your boss, you're just trying to get the fuck out of that conversation, just be like, yo, this is my boyfriend. A, this is my boss. Peace, right? Yeah. If you don't want to explain to them, if you don't actually care, and you know what? Talk to these people that you're doing the introducing. Talk to these people like, how do you want to be talked about? Because it will save you time. It will save you energy. It'll save you hurt feelings. I make a point of like telling people that I'm close to, like, please don't refer to me by this list of like pet names. I find them I don't like them. They're not good. They make me feel weird. You know, but also like there are certain things that I'm okay with being called by certain people that isn't my name, right? Because I don't want to, what are those called? Basically like there's a fancy name for pet names. I'm going to actually look it up because it's called a hypochorism. A hypochorism. That's the word. So a hypochorism is like a cuter version of someone's name or a pet name or whatever. And those things develop to create intimacy, right? The fact that I have a secret name for someone, I have their true name, right? That I only refer to them in private. That is a form. It's a bond of intimacy, right? And I think those are valuable. They're valuable and they're useful and they're cool. But you have to agree to them, right? We all get to decide how we are referred to. And if somebody is referring to you in a way you don't like, or it's outside of a context that is okay. And there's a lot of overlap here with the like trans community and the idea that we get to identify ourselves. I think that these things apply in all relationships, straight or queer, monogamous or non-monogamous, business, romance, whatever. We get to decide how we are addressed. And sometimes this is as simple as saying, oh yeah, please don't shorten my name. I prefer Robert. Don't call me Bob, right? But it can also be like, this is my secret name that only you get to call me in private. Never call me this in public. This is a title you can use for me. I'm okay when you call me this thing, but not that thing. Creates intimacy, builds respect, right? And then it's nice. It's fun. Makes us feel seen. So like, talk to your people. Talk to people about that. Have this conversation, right? Sit down with the people that you love and be like, yo, when I talk about you, how do you want to be talked about? What does that mean? Do you feel good when I call you by your like pet name? Can I call you that to other people? And I think you'll find you develop like weird linguistic patterns around people and who you're talking to. And I'm only kind of like thinking about this now, but like, so I have a really close friend. Her name is Emily. I call her Emily to herself. I call her Emily to everyone else. I have like 6 or 7 different weird things that I call her to her as well, but I would never use those to describe her to anyone else. But when I'm talking to her mom about her, I call her M. And I never do that. I never do that outside that context. And I think that's kind of cool. I think it's cool that those things happen, that we develop these things. Yeah. Yeah. And it's not merely for the sake of communicating to everybody using the same basic terminology. It's about acknowledging the unique specialness of a relationship and the context of that relationship. Yeah. I like it. Linguistics, terms of address. So I don't know. Talk to these people in your life. Nobody better ever call me their partner. I hate that shit, but it might work for you, right? I guess the only person that I would feel okay with calling me their partner is Sage, because I'm Sage's business partner. But I don't think that Sage would ever do that, which is fine. Yeah. So there you go. I don't know. Talk about it. Talk about it with people. Acknowledge their names. Talk about them. Refer to them by that by default, because that's who they are. And then everything else from there, build it yourself. But every once in a while, you're going to get in a position where it's just easier to use shorthand. And I think that's okay too. So that's our episode. Ugh, it's so nice talking about this stuff with you. Like, it just feels good for me. I feel like it's really meditative to sit down every once in a while and just talk about the way that we interact as people. I had a friend before we end the episode. Today, I had a conversation with a friend of mine who, she's not a big viewer. She doesn't watch a lot of Twitch or any at all. She's the kind of person I have to remind every once in a while, hey, you want to use your Prime sub on me? I know you have Prime. I know you never go on Twitch. Just give me that shit. But she doesn't really watch, she watches YouTube videos because I think everybody on Earth pretty much does now. But she said to me, she was like, I watched your weird relationship advice show, just because I saw it. It was just recommended to me, I guess. And I saw it and I was like, I don't know. I'm skeptical. This is probably going to be bullshit. But I watched it and I was like, oh, okay. What did you think? And she said, I was surprised. And I was like, by what? And she was like, well, you seem like you actually care about the things these people are asking. Not just the topics, but the people asking them. You sound like you're really empathizing with these people. And I was like, why does that surprise you? And she was like, I don't know. I wouldn't have thought you you're such a grump. You're such a pessimistic nihilist. Why would you care about people? And I'm like, well, no, I care more deeply about this stuff than almost anything else that I do, because there's so much vulnerability. Y'all expose yourselves to me in a way that is consensual and good, and I'm asking for it, and please don't take that as an opportunity to expose yourself to me. But your emotional stuff, it's a risk. You're saying here, I'm gonna write out my feelings to you in the hope that maybe you can help me. And that's important. That feels good to me. And so I feel like it is an honor to be able to engage with this material and to talk about this stuff with you, and that you watch and you listen, and that hopefully something in these last 31 episodes has been helpful or interesting or useful to you. I know that for me, this kind of ethos of caring about people's feelings and wanting to make the world a less garbage fire place for people, that runs through all the content that I do. It runs through everything, but this is where we get to concentrate that stuff. And I'm really thankful for this space. So thank you for watching. Thank you especially to our people who ask questions. You're the real heroes. And if you have a question, if you want to get involved, you want to ask questions, you want to start a conversation, hit me up. Go to my website, www.adam-koble.com. Click on the office hours link, fill out the form. You can do it anonymously. You can tell me who you are. And then in the body of the question, be like, don't tell everybody my name. I just wanted you to know who it was. I've had a few of those. And I will answer your question or one similar enough to it that I will be able to help you as well. in the future on another episode. That's it for Hot for Teacher for today. This has been episode number 31. You have been an absolute delight. I hope I have too. I will see you next time. Thank you so much for coming, everybody. Goodbye.